thanks to everybody that's come along and those that I don't know as well as those that I do. So what I thought I'd do today is, firstly, I'll give you the pitch because it's the easiest way to explain what the problem is and what the solution is and who we are. And then I'll get a little bit more loose around our journey for you. So as Mickey said, I'm Lloyd Davies, co-founder of Scrubit. This is Paul Fisher, one of the co-founders, and sadly our other co-founder, Beth Wozniak, has a sick child, so she's had to go home. You can tell we're a startup because we work exceptionally hard, we don't get paid, we have t-shirts, and we have laptop stickers, so I think we tick all the boxes there. So yeah, what I'll do, I'll give you the pitch because it's always good to practice the pitch. I was telling Mickey before, and you'll see in our journey, we've just come out of Slingshot accelerator program called HCF Catalyst 2, which was a 3-month program. And like all of those things, it culminates in what they call a demo day, where all of the businesses there do a pitch of their business. I can talk to you a little bit more about the journey towards that later. But it's not just an event that sort of happens and you get up and talk about your business again. It takes a long time to really understand your business enough to be able to do that talk. So it really is a culmination of all of that learning and study as well. So this version I'll give you today is a slightly cut down version of the one we did at the VMAX Cinema in George Street, Sydney, which was a fantastic experience to be able to do that. So I'll kick off with the formal one. Yeah, I'll kick into sort of formal mode for about 5 minutes, give you the idea. I'm more than happy to ask questions as we go. If you think of something, you know, you're not interrupting me because after then I'm just going to pretty much tell the personal story, which I guess is the idea.
Hi, my name is Beth Wozniak. I'm a scrub nurse and co-founder of Scrubit. During my first year of nursing, I was working in an operating theatre very similar to this one, and it was at this time that I was constantly being asked to go and gather equipment that should have been there in the first place. Scrub nurses would often yell the names of instruments as I ran down the hall to look for them, but I often didn't know what they looked like or where they were located. So I asked the question, does this only happen at this hospital or does it happen everywhere? We have since realised that this happens worldwide. The pivotal moment for me was when a surgeon ripped off her gown and walked out of the operating theatre, leaving a patient asleep on the table. She did this because she was so frustrated with not having the right tools to safely complete her surgery. And that's when the idea for Scrubit came about.
There we go, that's Beth Wozniak. So that's a pretty scary story that she tells, isn't it? Well, I'm here to tell you how all of those problems can be avoided. And I'd like to do that by firstly explaining to you a little bit more about what the problems are, the solutions to the problem, and the business behind that software. So firstly to the problem. This is a setup. It's all the items and instruments that a doctor requires in the surgery to perform an operation. In order to do a setup, a nurse will grab a trolley, grab the piece of paper that tells them what to collect, and they'll go off to all the rooms located throughout the hospital, collecting everything they need. But there's a problem, and the problem is that that list of required items, and they have a different list for every type of surgery they do, and each doctor has a different list for every type of surgery they do. It's a piece of paper. It doesn't explain very well what the items are. It doesn't tell them where they're located. It gives them very little information about those items. And as they do the setup, they just cross off what they find and they circle what they can't find. If they need to report out of stock to procurement, they'll scribble a post-it note and they'll take it out to them and hopefully it gets ordered in time. They then need to repeat the entire process in order to complete that setup prior to the surgery. So you can see it's really chaotic, and we know it creates error. And the reason we know is we did a detailed study of 100 operations and we found that 62 of the setups were missing required items at the time of surgery. And this means someone has to run from the operating theatre to get that item during the surgery, creating added risk to patient safety. But what we also found was, in 70% of the cases, there were items on that setup that didn't need to be there. Now these are expensive pieces of sterile equipment, and once you open them, you can't use them again, you've got to throw them away. So there's a huge added cost to this process being created there. So current attempts to solve the problem is to use experienced staff in order to do the setup. But because that preference card, that piece of paper, is wrong, the setups are wrong anyway. Also, because they can only do 1 or 2 setups at a time using this paper method, even they are taking just way too long to get them done. So there's a lot of time being wasted here. So you can see the problem. Well, how does Scrubit solve it? Well, firstly, Scrubit holds all of those easily accessible preference cards in the app so they can be kept up to date. But what we then do, we take every setup that needs to be done and we combine it into a simple to use checklist. That checklist shows the user all the details of the item they've got to collect and the shortest route to take in order to do the setup. It also shows them the quantity they've got to collect for every single setup they're doing. Because the user's just ticking what they collect and crossing what they can't locate, Scrubit knows the status of every single setup and it's able to automatically report out of stock information direct with procurement. Thanks to Scrubit generating accurate setups, we've been able to reduce the time that staff need to spend out of the operating theatre. We've reduced the procurement costs of the operating theatres, and we've increased staff satisfaction, which means the doctors and nurses are able to do a better job. In the words of one nurse unit manager, Scrubit has revolutionised the theatre setup process. So that's our solution. So let me tell you about the business. So Scrubit brings together experience in enterprise resource planning software, experience in business management. We've got a great deal of theatre in-theatre processes, especially setups, and we've got gun software development skills on board. And also recently, we were very proudly the winners of the 2017 Healthy Care HESTA Award for Innovation for Scrubit. Currently, we're selling Scrubit as software as a service, charging a per month per theatre fee for the software. This is actually out of date, which is really nice. We actually have 15 theatres trialling Scrubit with the intention of gaining over 400 theatres nationally across 3 separate private health groups. But we've also discovered that the medical suppliers that supply the items that go on those setups have a problem with their supply chain, and Scrubit solves that problem. So of course we're talking to them about how we can get together and do that. So you can see there is a large problem in the operating theatre, and with Scrubit we solve that problem. Scrubit ensures accuracy and efficiency in operating theatre processes, and this results in improved patient safety, time and cost savings, and overall stakeholder satisfaction. Scrubit, accurate surgical setups every time. Thank you. So, there we go. You need to be able to roll that stuff out. And what we do as well, and this is as a whole team, like the other guys actually haven't had to present this, but they also know backwards because we have literally had the elevator pitch over 2 floors once, where someone walked in, we were wearing a t-shirt and they went, "What's Scrubit?" And you go, "Wow, elevator pitch." And it's all that. It's all that stuff you learn about what you do and how to communicate it really effectively. And the only way to do that is what I just did off you just then, and practice. You just need to practice, 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 and it just needs to be automatic because you get to learn, you know, what resonates with people and what doesn't, how some things people pick up really quickly and understand really quickly and how sometimes they don't. Anyway, so that's the pitch. So what I'd like to do, I've got one slide for the rest of my talk, and I'm here to talk about our journey. So this is the journey of Scrubit, but my journey actually started probably a year or so prior to this. As Mickey said, I sold a business 2 years ago, and in that business I was one of 2 partners in the business, and I wasn't very happy in that business. And with that came a lot of guilt about not being happy, owning a business and employing a dozen people, having clients that I should be excited about and really just not caring. So I went looking for a solution, and I thought I needed to know more about business, how to do business. We were a very traditional sort of service-based business, and I felt I needed to get on board with, you know, how to do business. I'd come from a creative space, as Mickey said, with being a musician and doing maths and things like that, and that's what I thought I needed. And I happened to run into a gentleman who, here we go, he is my sister-in-law's brother. And I knew that they had a very successful business, and he was sitting up at Bar Beach one day, which I love, and he was there at 9 o'clock having a coffee, writing in a book, very similar to this one actually. And I just had a chat to him, and I went home and I said to my wife, I said, Dustin's just got it together, what's he doing? And she said, well, you know he's doing some coaching of some sort, he'd mentioned it before. So I asked Dustin and he made an introduction. And it's really important, this part of it, because what I found was not business coaching, I found life coaching. And if anybody wants to do startups, I suggest you find someone that can help you with yourself. It's very, very important being comfortable in your own shoes. And that made a massive difference to me. And it finally led to me, I tried to make things work in that business. I definitely tried to turn things around for me personally and turn it into the business I wanted it to be. But I grew apart from it, so I sold out of it, which wasn't a very easy process, but I did. And that brings us to sort of June 2015. So prior to that, at the same time, pretty much, Beth was a new nursing graduate, and she walked into operating theatres where you get a lot of more mature women in there, and they're just doing what they do. And she just went, this is crazy. That story she tells is absolutely true. The nurse that was there still says to her to this day, it's not at the hospital she's at now, thank goodness, but the nurse still says, remember that day that doctor walked out of the operating theatre? I can't believe it. So she had this idea, and coincidentally, her mother and I had done some business together previously. The business I had one of Australia's leading disability services client management systems that I had originally built. Paul did a lot of the development on it because Paul and I used to work together there. And so we'd actually worked together on getting software going before. She worked at Maywell, and we started in conjunction with them. That business has been left behind. It still exists though. So when Beth had this idea, her mum said, oh, you should talk to Lloyd. And I was trying to sell out of the business and looking for something, and that's sort of was something for me to look at in the future. So we started to discuss, that was in sort of June 2015, and it was put out there. That's about the same time I sold the business. It took me 6 months to get over that. So then we finally got our act together and commenced our MVP in March 2016. Now that took quite a while. Sorry, minimum viable product. I apologise, yes.
No, that's okay.
No, speak. Yeah, so our minimum viable product. It wasn't a minimum viable product. It was a maximum non-viable product, let's say. It was just too much, too early. Basically, you know, we put it in, and after like Beth and I had been lucky enough to have access to theatres to be able to do this, but we could only do it at night on weekend and on weekend. So we'd worked really hard in those time slots. Beth was still working during the day doing it. And we went and tried it with one person, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work at all. And I went home and I wrote down the 10 benefits of using our system, and one of them had to do with scanning the items off the shelf and onto the setup. So the nurse would pick something up and scan it, and it would say, yeah, you've got the right thing, and it would tell you where to put it, and you put it on the shelf and you'd scan it and you'd go, yeah, you put it on the right spot. Coming from that piece of paper where they were just crossing and circling and moving on, and you know, they felt they had it down fairly quickly, even if it wasn't accurate, it was quick. This thing just was a complete barrier to entry. We had to stop very quickly that day because they're trying to run a business and they needed to get the setups done. So we actually ended up helping them do setups to make up the lost time that day. So we wrote down this list of 10 things. One of them was this benefit. We weren't getting to any of the others. So overnight, pretty much literally overnight, we stripped all that functionality out, rebuilt it into a checklist that you just saw, took it in the next day, and we couldn't stop them using it. So I guess my learning there is you just don't assume anything. You know, we thought we were giving them this great functionality that would really improve the accuracy of things. There's no point being accurate, like improving the accuracy if you can't even use it. So that was fun. And we finally got, so that was our MVP there, March, April, May, June, July, August. It took us a while. Is when we finally actually deployed it Maitland Private. It was a real challenge because you're working with an operating business that has its own governance and things like that. So we did have to jump through a lot of hoops there. They had to trust us. So that's another thing. If you've got a good idea, get some early adopters on board really early, people that you can build trust with and they will trust you. don't take advantage of that trust. You have to look after their business while you're doing what you're doing, because you are disrupting what you're doing, what they are doing, and you're going to make mistakes, and they need to absorb some of that for you. So you need to work really, really hard on that relationship. So the reason that the deployment took so long, we probably had it ready for deployment 3 months earlier. We just couldn't get their attention. It's a really funny environment. It's a difficult environment. It's not like, you know, being a student or being at a desk where you can go and get a coffee whenever you want, you know, go and talk to someone about such and such. Oh, I've got a training session this afternoon. It doesn't happen like that. They've got surgery lists and people have to be operated on, and you need to be in the room. And that's it. You get lunch at a certain time because the operations finish at that time. That sort of environment. So we couldn't get their attention, and that took quite a bit. But we finally got it. And we got it deployed. We knew it was working. We knew it was valuable. We got a lot of great feedback from them. And we actually had a product, well, probably before, but around November 2016, we had a product. So we've had a product for quite a while, and we haven't changed it hugely since that night where we stripped out all of that extra functionality. But then, me being the business person of the organisation, and I use that lightly, very lightly, I kind of went, I don't know what to do with this business now. I hadn't really been exposed to this sort of startup methodologies and lean methodologies and stuff, and I started reading, and it was actually, and many of you will know, it was Justin from Camplify, who used to work for a client of mine, so I've known Justin a long time, and I knew they'd been through Slingshot. I made contact with him and we had a coffee. So coincidentally, and this is another thing, don't hesitate to reach out to people, even if you don't know them, because they had a lot of leg up, okay? Camplify are still legging up, but they've had a lot of help along the way, and they're more than willing to give back. So same with me. I'll talk about that later. But if you want to know someone, just ring them up and ask them some questions. So I met with Justin, and he said, so what are you doing? And we talked about it. And he said, just give me a sec. And he sent a text. And we sat there for a while, and he said, oh, I thought he'd be down by now. Anyway, Josh came down. Josh is his COO of Camplify. I'd never met Josh before. And he said, tell Josh your idea. So I told Josh what we were doing. And Josh looked at Justin and looked at me and said, do you know what I did before this job? I said, no. He said, I was a surgical rep. He said, I know exactly what you're doing. This is awesome. What are you going to do with it? How do we get in? All this sort of stuff. And so we started talking, and you know, I said to them, do we do Slingshot? And they were like, yeah, you do Slingshot. And I went, well, I don't know. I didn't want to give away any part of the business. We'd worked so hard for, you know, and you don't know what it's valued at, and you don't know what you're going to get, all of these angst around all of that. We applied for Slingshot. Justin and Josh helped me do the online application. They said, I know, you know, they knew what they needed, they knew what they were looking for. Trent Bagnall, who is a co-founder of Slingshot, is on the board of Camplify. It all helps. And then we got through to the next stage. We had to go and pitch in Sydney. Once again, the day before pitching, I spent the afternoon at Camplify offices pitching to them and changing the pitch and all of that. They helped us greatly. And we got in. Yeah, so we got into Slingshot. We've been doing that for the last 3 months. Now, I'm not sure if people here have been in an incubator or familiar with what they do. I know what I was going to say. So as I said, the real struggle for us was giving away 10% of our business, okay? We gave away 5% for...
When you get into Slingshot?
Yes. The part of the deal of going into Slingshot is equity in the business. So we got funding and we got the program. So the way they worked it is 5% is the funding and 5% is the program. I can say now I would not hesitate to make that decision again. No matter what Slingshot is, good and bad, we would not be in the position we are in right now without it. No way, because it just absolutely accelerates everything you do. We came back after the first week, and on the Friday we didn't have an office to go to because it was in Sydney, so we were doing a lot of travel, going back and forth, staying down in a really cheap youth hostel in Glebe Point and trying to save our money. You know, I told you we're a startup, we tick all the boxes. So we came back on the Friday and we worked out of my spare room, which wasn't sustainable, my wife told me. And by the Wednesday when we came back the next week, we had an office. You know, things just have to happen. You don't have time to make decisions. You just get on with it. With regards to money or help or giving away part of your business, you've got to look at the bigger picture. And we could be here now, at this time, 6 months later, after making that decision to apply, we could literally be nowhere. Like, I think we'd probably be nowhere. We may not even exist anymore. I don't know. But we didn't, and things are really taking off at the moment. So I just wanted to sort of hit you on a few things about the slingshot learning. So as Mickey said, I did a maths degree at Newcastle Uni. So obviously I did the HSC. That's probably been the main learning periods of my life. I haven't done any further sort of education other than my bachelor's degree. But the last 6 months, and especially the last 4 months, has been the hugest learning period of my life. And that's a real challenge when you're my age, nearly in your late 40s. But it's been incredible. And the real key to that is, and this is where I said to you, you've got to be really comfortable in your own shoes. So the real learning for me around it was that I had to be prepared to learn. Couldn't have any preconceived ideas. I couldn't come in and think I knew how to run a business, or I knew who could help me and who couldn't, or I knew our product really, really well. I had to go in and go, I don't know anything, I'm prepared to learn. But having said that, you've still got to be really comfortable with the decisions you make. So you can't take everybody's advice all the time. And that's a real struggle. And we saw people in the course really struggle with that idea of, I need to listen to these people, they're the experts, but I don't feel right about it. So you have to be really, really comfortable with making decisions for yourself, and you've got to be able to live with them. So if they're not right, they're just not right. It doesn't matter. They're just not right for you. They're right for someone else. And the other thing around that is that everything you do is a test. Whether it's the product, whether it's how you approach a customer, whether it's how you pitch your idea, everything's a test, and you have to just continually learn from that experience. But the beauty of treating everything you do as a test is that you can't fail. Because when you test something, you know, if you, my 15-year-old's in year 10, so they've just learnt the whole, what do you call it when you do a science experiment and the outcomes? You've got to have... Yeah. So you've got to... You're basically proving something right or wrong. So you make your statement and then you prove it right or wrong. Well, you can't fail. You're just making a statement and you're working out, is it right or is it wrong? But you don't fail. You know, you just learn. So if you treat everything as a test and then be prepared to fail, you'll learn so much more than if you try to be right all the time. You can't be right all the time. It's not going to work. Another thing, so some other things we learnt from being in Slingshot. One big thing for us was an introduction is invaluable. Prior to doing this, I wasn't very good at, I didn't like networking, okay? And I think that comes from, in my prior business, I wasn't happy with the business and I wasn't happy with the service we gave, so I was probably a bit embarrassed to network, to be blunt. And people say, oh, you have to be good at networking. Well, you do, but you have to be comfortable with how you want to network and how you want to talk to people. And I always find to do that, I just ask people about themselves, because people like to talk about themselves. And they're always flattered when you ask them about themselves and you listen to what they've got to say and you learn from what they've got to say. So I actually find it really quite enjoyable now. But the thing from that is an introduction is just hugely valuable. And an example of this is I'm involved in the surf club, and 2 weeks ago one of the dads from the Nippers kids I look after wanted to catch up with me. I had some awards of his son. So they're from New Zealand, they run a business in New Zealand, they live in Bar Beach. And so he goes back every couple of weeks to do business and then returns. And I thought, I wonder what New Zealand's like. I wonder what the market's like. So I got online, did a bit of digging around and learned a little bit about it. And so when I'm having a coffee with him, I just said to him, so what's it like doing business in New Zealand, And he said, it's a lot simpler. There's only a federal government and then a local government. There's less red tape. Because the population's smaller, they seem a bit more flexible and all this sort of stuff. And he said, what are you doing? And I told him what I'm doing. And he said, I'm doing a bit of work for an old school friend of mine. I'm meeting up with him Tuesday. We're good mates. He owns a hospital. The next day, he said, send me some stuff. I sent him some stuff. He sent it on. And by the next morning, it had got to the nurse unit manager at that hospital who'd said, this looks awesome, we've got to look at it. You just don't know, but that introduction from someone that knows someone is so invaluable. And that's the other thing. You just don't know who knows anybody, and especially in this town. So be careful what you say. But yeah, so you never know. So you've got to listen to people. And I had a similar experience yesterday when meeting a CEO, and ends up, of course, we knew a lot of the same people and that sort of thing. The other thing is you have to be open to opportunity. So that in my slide deck where I talk about the medical supply companies, so that came about because as part of Slingshot we did a day which was called Your Biggest Business Problem. So we had to come, this was in the early days, and we had to come and pitch our business. I don't recall what pitch I did, it wasn't very good, and we had 5 business people, and one of them was the head of the CEO of a private health group. So I knew the question I wanted to ask and I wanted her to answer it, and I got that. But on the panel was a gentleman called Gary Flowers. Now Gary is a director of Slingshot, and he's a director of lots of things. He's the director of the Australian Institute of Sport. He's the former CEO of Australian Rugby Union, very well connected guy, and a really, really lovely bloke. And after I've pitched, he's just stopped me on the way out and said, there's someone I need to introduce you to. Shoot me an email. So I shot him an email. He made the introduction to the CEO of a multinational in Australia that does surgical supplies. And he was really nice to me, this guy, and I kind of thought, it's an introduction through Gary. I've got to be careful of it. I've got to honour it. But what am I going to get? I just couldn't see the relationship. So I sat down with them one day in Sydney. They were very accommodating. We talked about what we do, and they sat there and said, let us tell you about one of our products. They told us about the product. And he told me about the product, and he told me about the problem. And I said, well, we solved that problem. He went, yeah, I know. Why do you think you're here? So, I didn't see the point in the meeting. You just don't know where that opportunity is going to come from. You don't know how someone's going to look at your product or look at what you're doing or come from a different industry completely somewhere else and go, this 100% applies to us as well, that you just haven't seen yet. So just be really open to that opportunity. Don't be sort of too tunnel vision in what you're offering people. Be willing to at least explore the possibilities. It doesn't have to work out, but it might. Righto. So, look, my final sort of official bit here is to sort of talk about the future of Scrubit. Sort of to go right back to this period here, one of the things I struggled with was, what is a startup and are we a startup and do we want to be a startup and all this sort of stuff. And I think we're all pretty comfortable with that. Where we are at the moment is, like I said, we're very highly paid volunteers. The business isn't making any money yet, but we've got a really massive pipeline. And if it all drops, we're in a hell of a lot of trouble. But hopefully some of it will drop fairly shortly. We've got some fairly aggressive goals for the first year, so we do need some of that to drop, but they're also very achievable. And as a team, what we've decided for the moment is to bootstrap the next 12 months. We think if we were to go and give away equity in the business now, we're at a disadvantage. We're kind of on a real precipice, and if in 12 months' time we had that, had met our targets, which we believe we can, we'd be in a much stronger position. So basically I'm talking about getting the same amount of money for less of the business type of thing, giving away less of the business. That's been a really difficult business decision to make, or personal decision, because we've all got personal finances to look after, and it's a real struggle on the family front as well to do this. But we're comfortable with that, and it just makes us work harder. So we are spending every minute of every day thinking, what are we doing right now to get that business? Like every single minute of the day. I only said to my wife this morning, when I worked at the other business, I used to not sleep because I was stressed and worried about stuff. Now I don't sleep because I've just got ideas going on and like just opportunity, and I'm not stressed about anything. I probably should be, but I'm not. And so I'm just losing sleep over what can I do. So that's when the New Zealand idea came up. Oh, I'm meeting someone from New Zealand. Let's have a look there. It might be an easy in. I met someone at the pub on Sunday, an old friend who's now made introductions in Victoria, which similar response. They're getting stuck right into looking at it. So these things just have to fall over. But we're just continuing to, more importantly than grow, we're learning constantly. So last week we put on a PR. So we're throwing down a little bit of money on PR at the moment to get the name out there. And we're learning about that. That's all brand new to us. We haven't done that before, and we don't really know what that means, but we've found someone we can trust. And so we've spent the morning taking our own video because a TV station needed some footage, and they don't have camera crews anymore, TV stations. So, once again, you just got to be prepared to do everything and learn from that experience. And then the overseas market is where we want to go. So what we discovered while doing Slingshot, when we looked at our market, the number of hospitals, operating theatres in Australia is a little over 3,000 operating theatres. So that, if we got them all, that would equate, at our retail rate, $14.5 million a year in revenue. Now that sounds nice for a business, but it's not nice for an investor. So if we wanted to go down that path of scaling up, we'd have to go overseas, and we'd have to scale overseas fairly quickly. But we are looking at that, and that's the time where we think that investment's going to be valuable, because 3,000 operating theatres in Australia is actually 330,000 in China. So we are now treating the market of Australia as the minimum viable market. So if we can capture 50% of the market here and work out how to deploy in that market, work out how to run that business, we're going to have a really nice little model on how to go overseas from that point on, and all the different ways we can do it. So that's the future for us. I don't have anything necessary I need to tell you at the moment. If anybody would like to ask me anything, I'm more than happy to accommodate. Yeah, actually that's a really good question, Mickey. So along the journey, once again, you never know who you're going to meet. So there's a nurse that works at Maitland Private Hospital, really lovely lady, and after we won the Healthy Care Award, we happened to be there the next day supporting them on something. And so they were all very excited for us that we'd won this award. They thought it was brilliant because it was related to their hospital as well. It was an internal award, so it was quite a big deal that day. And one of the nurses there says to us, so what are you going to do? Are you looking for investment? And we went, oh, we're not really sure. And she said, I'll introduce you to a friend of mine. She's had a startup before. I went, oh, okay. Introduced us to this friend, line up lunch down at the Happy Wombat. Her husband came in. So it ends up, this woman went to Newcastle High, has done what everybody did, left Newcastle and then came back. They live in Merewether. Her husband and his sister and brother-in-law or something had a startup in the UK that they took literally from nothing to being a listed company, and then they sold out. And she's a lawyer. And she sends us texts, writes on Facebook to us, and constantly keeps up to date with what we're doing. She watched my demo day pitch for Slingshot. She couldn't get to Sydney because she's got family. She watched it live on Facebook. She's that keen on us. Doesn't cost us a cent. And she's like, an amazing woman. She's really straight talker. She really wants to help. And so I hit her up a lot about, what do we need to do to look at investment? How much should we be looking at? Blah, 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 blah. And we've had lunches and coffees and all that sort of stuff. And on that, it doesn't mean I've stopped looking at it. So we haven't made that decision and not done anything. We've made that decision for now, and that's what I mean about testing something. So we're testing that. We sort of felt the pressure of having to make that decision as well amongst ourselves. We've moved out of Slingshot, and there's a lot of pressure in there. They're like, okay, you got to go get money. So once we got away from that environment and looked at ourselves and what we wanted to do and where we're up to, it's probably going to take me 3 months to do that, to go and get money, dedicated full time. What can I do with that 3 months right now with everything we've got going on? I can do a hell of a lot. So it's not dead and buried, that idea. It's just what it is today.
So they, just sort of to add to that.
Yeah.
So Slingshot and HCF aren't part of your business.
HCF don't.
Oh, or the process there.
A venture capitalist type of Slingshot team.
Sure. Okay. So VC and consent there.
Finance.
What type of pressure do they put on you?
None at all.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So Slingshot is pretty special in that respect, you know, because you'd know from your history, venture capitalists can be, you know, real pick at the bone. Yeah, you won't find a kinder investor. We have to do a quarterly report, which is a WooFoo page, and report to them on that. So they expect to never see the money again when they give it to you. Yeah, that's the sort of business they're looking for, because it's high risk. So if they go, okay, we're doing a program of 10, if 1 in every 2 program hits it big, they still cover themselves. You know what I mean? So you won't find a kinder investor than doing that program as well. So it's a really nice soft way to do it, because you don't have those pressures.
Yeah, because the original contracts didn't articulate the kindness of it all.
Well, that's lawyers, mate. Bloody lawyers.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, that's unusual for an investor to give you so much freedom.
Exactly, yeah. And they say to us, like, we don't want to be directors of your business. Trent did a session on, sort of corporate governance and all of that stuff for us, and pointed out he's a director of 2 companies. One is Slingshot and the other one is Camplify. And he's not on any others. And he would have seen hundreds of startups and probably had hundreds of offers to be on their boards, but it's not what he wants to do. And Slingshot don't want to operate like that. They don't have time, you probably noticed. They're moving on to the next big thing. So, so it's pretty kind money. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
What's your user acquisition strategy?
Our acquisition strategy is, at the moment, introductions. That's what we're doing. So now we're doing the PR as well to get the message out there. But essentially, so what we're focusing on is the major private health groups at the moment, and we're doing different things. So everything we do supports that idea that an introduction's really, really valuable. We've tried cold calling as part of our program. We tested cold calling. We did it for 2 weeks. We persisted, and it did get us one thing, but there were many other factors to that one thing as well, not just the cold call. So we have tested other things, so another thing we're doing to explain, we're currently part of the Regional Incubator Program, which we applied for, which is here in Newcastle. Tony's business is in it as well. Probably maybe Tony a bit ahead of us, but Tony and Scrubit are probably at the more advanced stage of that. There's a lot of people in that have an idea and are still working somewhere else and, you know, getting the training, which is fantastic. And I was quite upfront with them about why we were doing it. They're connected to a lot of local people, and they're connected with Hunter New England Health, and that's what we want. We want those warm handshakes. So I was pretty blunt with them that said, you know, we're here to really promote our brand in the business community of Newcastle and get those introductions, and it's worked. So that's what we're doing. But we've tested a lot of different things. like I say, we've tested cold calling, we've tested walking in and trying to get, introduce ourselves, we've tested going through the CEO, we've tested going through the head office, we've tested going through a nurse, we've tested going through the nurse unit manager. We changed if anybody's familiar with the lean canvas, and if not, and you're doing a business, you should get into it. And if you like the lean canvas, so it's a methodology by Ash Maurya, and it can make you really, really clear on what you're doing. And we continue to use it going forward. And look, like if anybody wants to have a coffee over that, I'm more than happy to do that. I think, I don't know whether it's really easy or I just get it, but I really enjoy that part of it. So it kind of helps you define who your customer is, what your solution is, how you're providing that solution, and then channels to get to provide the solution to the customer. And it's really black and white, and it's flexible. So it's a learning process once again. And so we changed, during Slingshot, every week almost, we changed who our customer was, and then we changed the channels to get to them. And we've tried all sorts of stuff. And we've found, from a brand point of view, it's not a direct sale approach, but Facebook, in the last 2 weeks especially, Paul just looks after the Facebook stuff for us, has really started to generate a lot of chatter about us. We're hearing that from actual people that go into hospitals, not just cyber people. And then we're looking at our Facebook stuff, and we're seeing perioperative nurses in Hobart, in Adelaide, joining up and some people asking us questions on Facebook and stuff, and that's been fantastic. And one of the things you've got to do there, you've got to get into generating content. So this is content. Paul just did some video. This becomes content. Everything you do becomes content. Paul takes a photo of his screen with some gobbledygook written on it and says, coding up some great new features today. That's content. You need to keep your brand aware, because a nurse could see it once and not care, twice and pique their interest. They see it 3 or 4 times, they start going, what is this I keep seeing? And then they look, and we've got a solution we know people want. I'm very, very confident about that. So once we get their attention, we're okay, but that's only just starting as well. So we've got these other things going on, which are the direct approach through introductions and stuff, but we've also building that sort of brand ecosystem out there, and we've engaged PR just recently for 3 or 4 months to try and get us some national coverage and things like that in what we're doing. Yeah.
Partnerships help a lot too with, especially the medical space.
Yeah.
So I'm in the space to do it. You really need to find good partners.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's another one. I found a company. I was introduced by someone through the regional incubator program, actually. To someone that runs a services company. So they just do development and stuff like that. They're large, they're Australia-wide, and they do health. So they're looking at us going, well, any new product a hospital puts in, it's got to be good for us. So, there's no formal relationship. It's just great for me, because I've had those conversations with people saying, well, how can this integrate with our procurement system? I say, I don't know, but it can, and I know the guys that can do it for you. So that puts me as an expert in that field. I'm able to solve the whole problem, but not do it because I don't want to. So, so those sort of building those relationships, and people are out there looking for them. You just got to ask. The biggest thing we had from the demo day, so the demo day for Slingshot was about 450 people in the theatre, from venture capitalists to nosy people that were just interested in being there, to our families, and a lot of people were there. The most introductions I got after it were from other business people that had come along because it was health tech, and they're in the health space and they want to see what other people are doing and who can they talk to. So I was approached by a guy from China. He's Australian, but he lives in China, and about his business and what he's doing and some synergies between them. And another guy, the business is out of Singapore, and they do location services. So he looked at our product and went, if you were the front end and we put the hardware in, we could tell people where everything is located, and you just show them the list and we show them where it's located. Like literally walk over and pick it up, there it is. So he's kind of gone, we're trying to get into health with our hardware. This would be awesome because you're a mini picking warehousing system, and that's what our system does. So he'd come in from Singapore just to be there that night and to talk to some, to see what people were doing. And so you exchange details, he gives it to the right person, they make contact and you see what happens. It doesn't cost you anything. But he goes and talks to someone else. So they're in health, they're trying to get in health, they're talking to a hospital, and he says, oh, I saw this product that does that. I've got their details, you know what I mean? So you've got to just, you never know.
Going back to the MVP stage, where
Yep.
you described that you could only really test it after hours or on weekends.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? That you had like a sort of dummy theatre set up? Or was it?
No, we went into the theatres. We went into the theatres.
At the time?
Initially, no.
Right.
Eventually, yes. Yeah. That's been fun for me as like a business and software person. Scrub up, get in the scrubs and go in and being around it. You don't want to hear a knee operation going on. Like it's like, oh, who's that? Yeah. So initially it was all after hours and weekends and testing and stuff like that. And then when we started deploying it was obviously during hours that we had to be there in the theatres.
And what were some of the unforeseen challenges in that deployment phase?
Wi-Fi. These are concrete bunkers and they didn't have very good Wi-Fi. So, and they still don't actually, that particular site. Also, phones and stuff being used in theatre is only a relatively new thing and it's still sort of breaking the rules, but everybody does it. And the reason everybody does it is the surgeons want to do it and that's the end of it. If the surgeons want to do it, you can do it. So the Wi-Fi was only there for the surgeons, really, why they put it in, because the surgeons wanted Wi-Fi. And it wasn't really a business grade Wi-Fi. And there was huge dead spots in it. So we had to, in that MVP, we had to build, when I say we, I mean he, had to build ways of using storage on the device to, be able to be offline and not lose the data as they're going around. Initially, it was literally just every time you ticked, it would communicate, but it just didn't work. So we basically capture all the data we need down into memory on the phone. You do what you do and you hit go. And if it doesn't upload, it tells you and then it tries again and it gives it a longer timeout. And the idea is you walk out in the hall and hit that button. But the way we designed the process was that's actually hidden. So the way the device works is when you are doing that interaction, you are in the hall. It's not like you go to the hall to do the interaction. You are in the hall when that interaction occurs because of how we designed the process. So that was probably the biggest challenge. The other one was obviously getting their attention, getting the staff's attention. I sort of had to threaten pulling it out and say, we can't do this, we're going to find someone else to do it with. And they went, oh, no, we really want it. So there was that. And, okay, so the other thing which I didn't talk about was, so I come from this ERP background. So we'd sell 100 grand of software and 60, 80 grand of services to put in the system. So I was used to sort of large project management stuff. And when we went in there, all those skills had to come to the fore because we literally had a scrub nurse, while we were testing it, she literally walked over and pretended to spit on the app and walk away. Like, I'm not using this. So we had to work out how to overcome that. Well, for us, the best way to overcome that is not to go head to head with that person. Absolutely 0 point. We just went around them. So what we do when we do it now, and a learning process, once again, we went, okay, this is a challenge, how do we work this out? So what we now do, we pick the most open-minded, tech-savvy scrub nurse in the place. They might just be able to use Facebook, but that's okay, as long as they can use Facebook. And we then pick a surgeon that they work with quite intimately, so they know very, very well, and we get that data into our system, and we start doing setups just using that. Then we pick another doctor for that same nurse and another one, and then by the time we're finished with that nurse, those that are your second-tier early adopters are champing at the bit, and by the end, that person sent us a text and said, this program is awesome, congratulations. And we didn't touch her. We didn't go near her. She just had to take it up because she didn't want to be left out as well. So you've got to work with that. So yeah, in the end, we got everybody on board, but that was a huge challenge of how to get them to take it up, because those that could see it knew it was beneficial, but other people don't want to change, their job's in jeopardy. We've always done it this way, it's always worked. They don't correlate the difference between the mistakes being made and the problems that come out of it, like setups being wrong and money being wasted. They don't, it's not that they don't care, but it's what they've always done, and people don't like change. So software is much more about cultural change than it is about the software. Deploying software is about cultural change, and if you remember that, it's about people. It's got nothing to do with the software. You've got to work with the people using the software as a tool, and that's what we had to do there. How's time?
Is there any more questions?
I just want to ask, I'm way back at the Better Way stage.
Yeah, great.
I'm a nursing student at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And basically I've got an idea for a health industry business. How do I go about, if I don't have a mum that's connected to someone, and to actually start talking to someone that really...
You talk to Mickey, you talk to me.
Yeah.
You talk to him, he might know someone. No, he doesn't know anybody. You talk to people and you just ask. You ask for help. That's what you do. Someone will know someone. I'm happy to chat. I'm happy to talk about that lean canvas and get your thoughts together. It really, really, really helps. I wish I'd known that when I was back in business before. I would have used that for all my deployments. And we would have had people using software on day one instead of people sitting meetings trying to decide what to build on day one, and 3 months later having a document like this. Then you go build it, and then you deliver it, and they go, what's that? That's not what I wanted. Day one, you can start doing stuff. But you're just really seeing if you're right, and if you're wrong, you do something else, and if you're right, you do that and then do something else.
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy to catch up, and because of what we're doing, we do know a lot of people in health as well, so we might be able to help out. That's what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, you talk.
I think that's great. Big thank you to Lloyd for a
Thank you.
fantastic presentation.
That's fun. Thanks very much.